Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'd like to thank the new subscribers who have subscribed to this new channel, and I'm really grateful that you have. So thank you for doing that. Anyone who's liking, commenting, and subscribing, you're awesome. Thank you so much. Today I want to talk about, give you a little pep talk. Give you a little pep talk. You didn't miss out on real estate. If in the last few years, you felt that you missed the boat on real estate, in my opinion, I do not believe that you did. Fortunes can change, realities can change like that, and suddenly you go from having all this equity in a home to losing your home. There's going to be a lot of that, in my opinion. All of this is my opinion, only that. But I think it's Wednesday, here in New Zealand, I believe that we were the most expensive real estate market in the whole world. Little old New Zealand. But I mean, Australia was like crazy expensive, and housing around the world was crazy in prices, right? And any talk of a crash, nobody believed that a crash would really happen. Oh yeah, prices could come down 5% and they'll just shoot back up again. But au contraire, this Wednesday, I think, the Reserve Bank of New Zealand is holding its rate hike meeting, and the consensus, it's not a foregone conclusion, but the consensus is that interest rates will go up and the single largest one-day hike in OCR history. OCR is like official cash rate, so what our interest rate is set by the Reserve Bank is. And they're predicting 1%. Now, it might not go up 1%, but I think it could. It could even go up more. I don't think they're going to go up more, but they're losing the battle to inflation. So if they really are serious about winning the battle, they're going to have to make some big, drastic decisions. Now, if they go up 1%, let me tell you what's happening in our real estate market. I just saw a beautiful home in the Wellington region. Beautiful home, nicer than any home I've ever lived in. With on the web page that I saw the info, it was $1 million or 900 and something thousand that they thought it was valued. So it's like 875 to like 1.1, and they whatever the middle of that is, sort of that kind of figure anyway. Let's call it 950. And they were trying to get best inquiry over 875. That house sold for 675,000. Now that might sound like a lot where you're from, but to put that in perspective, this sort of time in what are we 20 so like call it January 2021, you could not find anywhere to live much under like 700,000. There's just about nothing. They would be like scummy rentals. Okay, most houses, I mean, I think in my city, the average home price, I think it might have hit $1 million. $1 million. In 2015, I bought my first home in that city for 145,000. 145,000. And I wasn't sure if I was making the right move. And then for a while there, you couldn't buy in that very region for under 550,000, and it was the worst region of that city. It was full of crime and stuff like that. 550 was the cheapest house, and I mean there were some really bad houses there. 550 was the cheapest. That was what was told to me by someone in real estate. This was an area that in 2010, I think it was, an agent told me the banks would not lend to anyone who wanted to buy in that region because, you know, might not see their money back because it could go down in value because it was an undesirable location. And just a few years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you couldn't buy anything under 550 in that region. The house that this sold for 675 was, a beautiful home. It was like so much nicer, and in a main region, in a main city. Now, why did they sell that so much less than what they were asking for? Sort of talking 200 odd thousand less. Rate hikes. Either desperation. It could have been a marriage bust up. It could have been a relationship bust up. It could have been somebody died and it was just sold for to split between kids, or it could have been a landlord who was desperately trying to dig his way out of a hole and needed to get his hands on some kind of cash flow. It could be a business that's struggling. Could be a bankruptcy. Could be all number of things. But if they did not sell for desperation, like where it's that urgent, it's more than likely the impending rate hike of 1%. Now you imagine if 1% of interest gets whacked on this cash rate just before Christmas, with 50,000 Westpac Bank customers rolling off low rate mortgages to these new high rates over the next sort of 5 months. It was 6 months when I read the article, but let's say a month has passed, roughly, call it 5 months. So what are we? December, January, February, March, April. By April next year, that's just one bank. You could use the law of averages and say, there's sort of 4 main banks, roughly just off the top of my head. So you're talking 200,000 households, roughly. In New Zealand, the bank of mum and dad, that is, parents who have either come into some money or have some money, have given it to the children to help them onto the property ladder. And it's gone. And that's one thing, if you can, the price of the house, if you're not planning on actually leaving it, if you're going to stay there, it doesn't matter too much, does it? So long as you can make the payments. What if they lend that money and the kids can't actually afford, because they couldn't afford a deposit, if they can't afford 7, 8, 9, 10, who knows what interest rate? What if they can't afford it and they have to mail in the keys as such? And the parents say, okay, but you paid $1 million for this house, or 800,000, or 700,000, whatever it might be. Call it 800, call it $1 million, round figures. And if you mail in the keys, you have to declare bankruptcy, and because you can't pay back, 400,000 in lost equity, or 500,000 in lost equity, whatever it is. I mean, case in point, the house in the Wellington region. So declare bankruptcy, but that means the parents' retirement, their money is gone. It's gone. And the bank of mum and dad is larger than one of the main banks here. It's lent more money out to children, essentially clients the banks wouldn't look at because of risk. The parents took on the risk because they didn't, it's pretty safe, interest rates are low, housing just keeps going up, I'm helping my child. Suddenly, they've borrowed against their home, taken on this debt that they're liable for, and it's gone. And it's gone. So I have maintained since the post-lockdown boom of 40% in less than a year, that we would get a 70% correction. And I know that sounds crazy, but I've said in other videos, in that 12 months that included that 40%, it went up 50%. So you're talking a 20% correction before that 50%. So your prices were pretty high at that point. No one expected 50% in 1 year. So you're talking 20%. And why do I think that? And that might be more. It might be more. Why do I think that? It's because these interest rates are way higher. Inflation is way higher. See, inflation is like, if it costs you more, if it costs you 10% more a week to live, and it keeps rising, and then on top of that, you get a fuel tax in January come back in of 25 cents a litre in New Zealand, that's coming back on. And then on top of that, you've got the interest rate on your mortgage going up, and on top of that, the house keeps going down in value. And then on top of that, you've got the threat of unemployment. This crisis is going to be off the Richter scale enormous. And there's no way out of this crisis, in my opinion. Because what are their options? Their options are to do nothing and let inflation run wild. Well, that's not a good idea. That's a terrible idea. Because as the dollar falls, when interest rates aren't being, when they've given up the fight, the dollar will fall and will be a third world, And then the other option is to crank up interest rates, stop printing money, tighten, be responsible, cut government spending, do all the hard things, the things that are going to cause immense pain. And it's going to be painful. It's the right course of action. You're looking at the patient and saying, what does the patient need? This crappy medicine, but what else can we do here? Or the third option is just print and hyperinflate your currency. All options suck. The only difference is that if they go with the hard option, eventually the economy will come back. Eventually. But it will take a long time. And a whole bunch of people that remember freshly in their memory how they were suckered into a false sense of security from a real estate boom, how they were suckered in by a false sense of employment that was never going to, hard times are coming. And I think the COVID thing, because we all expected it to lose our jobs, and suddenly you couldn't get work, there was too much work, there's not enough workers. It's like, well, if that couldn't stuff us up, if that couldn't cause a huge depression, then nothing can. But what they didn't realise is that they kicked the can the last kick down the road. There is no more room to move. There's no more wiggle room. This is it. This crash is going to come. And so all you people who didn't buy a house, who missed out, who played it safe, who might have saved up some money, but it wasn't enough for a deposit and you were just saving but wondering why you were doing it if you're never going to buy a house. This is going to be, in my opinion, a role reversal. It's going to be a role reversal. That, the wealth is transferred to those in the right position. So hopefully you have put yourself in the right position. And what's happening in New Zealand is just unfolding everywhere in the world. I think we had the Bank of England come out and say inflation was 11%. Like, where is that going to end? 12, 13, 14, before they say, when you get to 15, that is a doomsday inflation number. And then what are they going to do? Are they really going to say, well, our interest rates, I don't know what they are over there, but we'll call them 4%, 3%, 2%, whatever, they'll be under 5. What are they going to do at 4% and just go, okay, we're going to go from 4% to 17% in a day? Because if we don't, that inflation is going to 20%. It's going to march on to 20, and when it gets to 20, we can't do anything except complete collapse. What are they actually going to do? And this is globally. This isn't just New Zealand. New Zealand, I think, has lost the inflation fight, but if they act quick, if they actually act quick, they might be able to win it. But they've got to make bigger moves than 0.5%. This should have already, when inflation was being called transitory, they should have hiked inflation through interest rates through the roof then and got ahead of the curve. To say it was transitory, looking at all the data and come up to that conclusion, it's not a problem, it's going to go away by itself, was a silly mistake. Because what these bankers don't seem to want to either admit or don't seem to get is that moving faster now is going to be so painful, but you're not going to have to move as hard and fast as you will if you wait for the problem to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Oh God, it's worse than we thought. Oh, the little rate hikes weren't working. Oh, now what do we do? Oh, well, the only thing we can do is crank the interest rates up through the roof. I mean, that's not a good strategy. It probably was going to happen anyway. And it's like they think, if they buy you 6 months, they're doing you a favour. It's like, what's the difference? In 6 months, you're going to be just as devastated if things don't go your way as if it happened yesterday, So I'm expecting, here's what I'm expecting. The forecasts from the financial institutions is that we're going to see another 10% fall in house prices. I think the numbers they're reporting don't seem to line up with what I'm seeing that are selling. They're saying, regions are down 17%. The very same region that I just gave you an example of a $900 and something thousand valuation on this website, selling, asking for 850, I think, and getting 675. It used to be worth nearly 1.2 million. So that's nearly cut in half from the highs. Because they're talking about 17% from the highs. It's way beyond that now. They have to be lying because, like we had one economist here who's sort of a well-known dude, and, he came out with doom and gloom. And suddenly he does a complete U-turn and he's saying, don't wait. Buy a house now, or I think in April next year things are going to take off. What? When interest rates are 2 or 3% higher. Supply and demand doesn't matter when you can't afford it. So I'm hoping you guys got prepared and ready to take advantage of the fire sale that we're going to see, because it's going to be enormous. So I believe if it's Wednesday that they hike rates. Wednesday you're going to see 1%, at least 1%. If they only do half, that's a very telling thing that they've already lost the fight and they're giving up. If they only go like half or 0.25, which they might use, with Christmas coming up, we don't want to put too much pressure on Kiwi households. They could go down that track, which would be a real bad move, because come February, when the next meeting comes out, they might have to go 2 or 3% because they didn't act fast enough. It's only going to escalate. If you look, I think we started at 0.25% increments. I think it was 0.25. Then it's gone to 50. Then it's gone expecting to be the next one 75. I don't think they've done a 75, and now they're sort of expecting a 1%. So it's doubled, and it's doubled again. So the next move, what is that? If the inflation doesn't go away, is the next move 2% hikes? Probably. And if people are struggling now, if homes are falling like a rock now, can you imagine the weight? And imagine the government. It can't afford these interest rates. The construction sector can't afford these interest rates. Hospitality can't afford these interest rates. And I'll tell you what, a lot of things are really quietening off. I think we're going to see, if they go 1%, people are going to panic. They're going to say, wow, right, I see where we're heading. And I'm scared because I don't think I can pay my mortgage if this keeps going on. And this is where they go into, panic mode, and they start going, we're cutting off the gym memberships, we're cutting off the paid TV subscription, no more Netflix, we're not going to go out to eat, we're not going to upgrade the car, we're going to sell the car, and buy a cheaper car, because we will drive a cheap car if it means keeping this house. The last thing anyone wants to lose is their house. And if they start getting the feeling that they're going to lose that, then watch this space. So, yep, that's my sort of take on things for today, and we'll see you on the next one. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Thank you. Bye.